Hi, I'm Em, and welcome back to the Professionals Recovery Room.
Today we're talking about workload design, and this is one of my favorite topics because we talk a lot about things that are super obvious, that are easy to identify, that you know that something has to change because something is burning you out or using too much of your energy. But one of the things about workload design that's really interesting is that it can be the hidden work that's burning you out, not the things that are easily identified. So let's start with a little exploration. Have you ever looked back on your day knowing that you worked nonstop, but feeling like you really didn't get anything meaningful done? Or ask yourself, why am I exhausted? I didn't even finish the thing that I was supposed to finish. Or maybe you ended your day thinking, why does all of this feel so much harder than it should? And then you do that thing that high performers do. Of course, you blame yourself. You look at all the things that you might have done wrong. You assume that you needed better time management. You needed more discipline. You think about how you can tighten up your morning routine, or maybe add in one more productivity book or hack to make things easier. But what if the problem isn't your effort? And honestly, if you're a high performer, it's likely not about your effort. It's likely about your workload design. So let's talk about it, and let's get into the hidden work that no one really talks about until it's too late. There are 4 silent burners of energy happening in most professional jobs: invisible labor, context switching, rework, and unclear ownership. And let's go through each one of these one by one in some detail so you can really understand what this is. And let's start with invisible labor. That's really the work that no one tracks. So we're talking about things like following up, clarifying expectations, emotional smoothing, fixing communication gaps, and then, of course, being the stable one, especially if you're the competent one on your team. There is really no KPI tracking that, but it does stick with your nervous system. And if you really think about this list, these things are happening all of the time, just taking from your energy reserves, but having nothing to really show for it. The next one on the list is context switching. Research from the American Psychological Association shows that multitasking and task switching reduce productivity by up to 40%. 40%. So every time you jump from an email to a slide deck to a Slack to a meeting, back to your email, you're context switching. When you reopen something that you were already halfway through an hour ago, you're context switching. And when you're at your desk, kind of glazed over, thinking, where was I? What was I doing? That's in the middle of context switching. And every time you're doing that, your brain is burning glucose. It's a cognitive cost to you, and it takes time. And most of us are switching contexts every 3 to 7 minutes. And if that sounds like something you're doing, of course you're tired, and you're still expending all of that energy. You're doing a lot of work, but you're doing it inefficiently. And then we have rework. You finish something, it comes back, not because you did anything wrong. Maybe you did, but let's just say that you didn't. But because maybe expectations weren't aligned. Maybe ownership wasn't clear or decision criteria wasn't defined. So you redo and you redo and you redo again. And then someone says, we just need to move faster. This is taking too long. And you're sitting there, hands in the air, like, yes, obviously, right? It's not like you asked for all of that rework. And again, that's taking up valuable time. The next one is unclear ownership. And this one is massive. When everyone is invited to the meeting, no one is the clear decision maker, and you're kind of responsible, but not fully empowered. Your brain stays on alert, and you may be thinking too far into what other people are saying. You may be assuming that they won't agree with you, but you're doing this because ambiguity feels like a threat. It feels unsafe. So research in organizational psychology shows that role ambiguity is strongly correlated with burnout and emotional exhaustion. And it wasn't because you couldn't handle the responsibility, but it's because your nervous system hates uncertainty without control. And in situations like these, it's rarely a one and done, right? The meetings create more meetings and create more meetings and then pull in more opinions and more perspective and more people. This is lack of efficiency. This shouldn't be our normal. And if these 4 things sound a little bit like your workday, you're probably getting burned out because the work is fragmented. The ownership is unclear. The rework is likely constant, or at least super common. And that invisible labor is stacking up. So when your boss says, "Why are you so busy? I see a list of 3 projects. This shouldn't be that much for you." And of course, you don't have a list written down of how your day's going or how your week has been or how the past month has been, but you know that you've been busy and you've been nonstop running around. You just don't have anything to show for it. Or maybe you're having to clarify expectations with your team for the umpteenth time, or have to manage the emotions on your team. That's always fun. Or maybe you're just having communication issues and you're having to go back and fix those communication gaps. But more than likely, being that you are a high performer, you're also the stable one that has to keep it all together, that has to keep calm, cool, and collected and make sure all these things are happening. And that's a lot for one person to handle. And the issue isn't with you. It's with the design. And if we don't design the workload intentionally, high performers like you end up compensating. And high performers are very good at compensating because they pick up the slack. They smooth the tension. They fill the gaps. And they will make it work until they end up being the ones that are depleted and burned out. If this sounds like anything that you've been going through, I want to give you something practical. So in part 2 of this episode, we're going to choose one simple cleanup move you can make this week that will help you get back on track. See you there.